I spotted her from across the ballroom, champagne flute in hand, working the crowd like she owned the place. Audrey, my sister, flashing that same smug smile she wore 5 years ago when she proudly declared stealing Jack her greatest win. Tonight, at the Seattle Children's Hospital Charity Gala, she commanded attention in her designer gown, completely unaware I was watching. Our eyes locked suddenly across the sea of black ties and evening dresses. She froze momentarily, then recovered with a practiced smile, the kind that never reached her eyes. The perfect moment arrived when my husband returned with fresh champagne. That was when Audrey finally saw the man on my arm. Her face drained of color in an instant. She recognized him immediately, and I watched with quiet satisfaction as her confident facade crumbled completely. Growing up in our affluent Boston suburb, Audrey and I shared a bedroom with a line of tape down the middle that neither dared cross. She was 2 years younger but perpetually determined to catch up. While we hugged at birthdays and posed for holiday photos, a current of competition always flowed beneath the surface of our relationship. I excelled academically without much effort. Valedictorian, full scholarship to Harvard Business School, and a fast track marketing career that had me directing campaigns for Fortune 500 companies by 28. Audrey struggled through community college, jumping between majors before landing an entry-level position at a fashion magazine where she spent more time networking at parties than building substantial career skills. Our parents tried not to play favorites, but I overheard my father once tell my mother, "Delinda makes it easy to be proud." Those words weren't meant for me, but I carried them like a secret talisman during difficult moments. Perhaps Audrey had heard similar comments that cut in the opposite direction. I met Jack Harrington at a corporate function where I was presenting our successful campaign for a luxury watch brand. He approached afterward, ostensibly to discuss business, but his interest quickly turned personal. Tall, with perfectly styled dark hair and a practiced charm, Jack headed his own investment firm catering to Boston's elite. Our connection was immediate and intense. "You completely owned that room," he said during our first dinner date at an exclusive restaurant overlooking the harbor. "I've never been so impressed watching someone work." For 2 years, we built what I believed was an unshakable relationship. Jack understood my ambition and supported my career in ways previous boyfriends had found threatening. We talked about combining our professional strengths to build something together. When he proposed at my family's lake house under a blanket of stars, I didn't hesitate to say yes. My mother immediately launched into wedding planning mode, securing the historical botanical garden venue I had dreamed about since childhood. Audrey reluctantly agreed to be my maid of honor, though her enthusiasm seemed forced during dress fittings and menu tastings. "You and Jack are just so perfect," she would say, emphasizing the word perfect with what I now recognize was subtle mockery. Some girls really do get everything. 3 weeks before the wedding, I borrowed Audrey's phone to call our mother when mine died. A text notification popped up as I held it. "Missing you already. Last night was worth the risk." The message was from Jack. My fingers moved automatically, opening their text history. Dozens of exchanges spanning months revealed an affair that began shortly after I introduced them. Photos, intimate details. Plans made while I worked late. The final text from Audrey to Jack the previous night. "Are you sure she doesn't suspect anything?" I confronted them separately. Jack claimed temporary weakness, begging forgiveness. Audrey was surprisingly calm when I showed up at her apartment, still clutching her phone with the evidence. "You didn't actually think he would choose you forever, did you?" she asked, leaning against her kitchen counter. Men like Jack want arm candy who understand social dynamics, not workaholic corporate drones. When I reminded her that I was her sister, she laughed. "This isn't even the first time, Delinda. Remember Ryan in high school? Todd in college? They were so easy to turn. You never notice how quickly men get bored with your intensity." The revelation that she had pursued multiple boyfriends throughout our lives left me speechless. The wedding was canceled with humiliating announcements and returned gifts. I retreated to my apartment, ignoring calls from friends and extended family. The worst came during Sunday dinner at our parents' house 2 weeks later. I attended only because my mother insisted it would help normalize things. Audrey arrived last, with Jack. They announced they were dating officially now. When my father expressed mild disapproval, Audrey raised her glass. "To my greatest win," she toasted, looking directly at me, finally proving that little sister can take what matters most from perfect Delinda. The table fell silent. My mother changed the subject while my father stared at his plate. Nobody defended me. The message was clear. Keeping family peace meant accommodating Audrey's behavior. I left without touching my food and knew then that I had to leave Boston entirely. I moved to Seattle on a rainy Tuesday in April, choosing the city specifically because it was as far from Boston as I could get while remaining in a marketing hub. My parents objected strenuously. "You're overreacting," my mother said during our last conversation before I left. "Families work through these things. Running away won't solve anything." "Audrey is your sister," my father added. "Blood is thicker than water. You need to be the bigger person here, like you've always been." That was exactly the problem. I had always been expected to be the bigger person, to accommodate Audrey's jealousy and petty rivalries because I had other advantages. This time, I chose myself instead. Seattle welcomed me with its cool embrace of misty mornings and coffee shop anonymity. I rented a small studio apartment overlooking Lake Union and applied for marketing director positions similar to what I had left behind. The rejections piled up quickly. Overqualified. Not quite the right fit for our culture. Concerned about your longevity with our company. Without references from my previous position, having left abruptly, and with my confidence shattered, I expanded my search to include junior positions. After 6 weeks and dwindling savings, Westbrook Creative offered me an assistant account manager role, several rungs down from my previous executive status, but with health insurance and a steady paycheck. "Your portfolio is impressive," said Harold Westbrook, the silver-haired founder who interviewed me personally. "But I sense there's a story behind this career shift. Whatever it is, everyone deserves a fresh start." I threw myself into the work, handling difficult clients and tight deadlines without complaint. My first friend in Seattle was Tara Wilson, the receptionist who noticed I spent lunches alone at my desk. "Nobody should eat sad desk salad by themselves," she declared, plopping down across from me one day. "Spill your life story or don't, but either way, I'm your designated lunch buddy now." Tara became my lifeline, dragging me to local music shows and insisting I join her weekend hikes in the surrounding mountains. Through her persistent friendship, I slowly began to recover pieces of my former self. My career gradually rebuilt as I landed a small cosmetics company account that other team members had written off as impossible to please. My campaign doubled their sales in 3 months, earning me a promotion to full account manager. The hardest part was therapy, which I started 6 months after arriving in Seattle at Tara's gentle insistence. Dr. Patterson helped me unpack not just the betrayal, but the family dynamics that had set the stage for it. "Your entire identity was built around being the successful daughter," she observed during one session. "When that identity was threatened, you lost more than a relationship. You lost your sense of self." Those weekly sessions helped me establish boundaries with my family. I spoke with my mother monthly but refused to discuss Audrey. I declined holiday invitations, spending Thanksgiving with Tara's boisterous family instead. Christmas, I spent volunteering at a local shelter, finding unexpected peace in serving others who had also experienced loss. After 2 years of silence from Audrey, an envelope arrived with a Boston postmark. Inside was an elegant wedding invitation for Audrey and Jack, with a handwritten note. "Thought you'd want to see what a real power couple looks like." I tore it into tiny pieces, scattered them into Lake Union from my small balcony, and called Dr. Patterson for an emergency session. That night, Tara brought over ice cream and movies. "Some people are emotional vampires," she said as we watched the sun set over the water. "They can only feel full by draining others." The next day at work, Harold called me into his office and offered me a promotion to creative director. "You've become the backbone of this agency," he said, "and we've just landed the biggest potential client in our history. I want you to lead the account." Westbrook Creative's conference room buzzed with nervous energy as we awaited the arrival of our new client. Carter Technologies had developed breakthrough quantum encryption software that promised to revolutionize digital security. Landing this account would put our mid-sized agency on the national map. "He's a genius, but notoriously difficult," Harold warned me before the meeting. 3 agencies before us couldn't meet his standards. When Nathan Carter walked in, he wasn't what I expected. No hoodie or sneakers like typical tech founders. Instead, he wore a perfectly tailored navy suit with no tie, his light brown hair slightly tousled as though he'd run his hands through it repeatedly. What struck me most were his eyes, an unusual shade of amber that seemed to evaluate everything with unnerving precision. "Your preliminary concepts are interesting but fundamentally wrong," were his first words after brief introductions. "You're positioning this as security software when it's actually freedom technology." I felt my team deflate around me as Nathan systematically dismantled our presentation. Instead of retreating, I stood and removed my blazer, setting it deliberately on my chair before approaching the whiteboard. "Then help us understand your vision correctly," I said, uncapping a marker. "What does freedom technology mean to your customers?" For the next 2 hours, Nathan and I engaged in intellectual combat. He would propose a concept, I would challenge its marketability, I would suggest an approach, he would identify its technical limitations. The rest of the room faded away as we filled whiteboards with competing ideas. "You're the first person who hasn't simply agreed with everything I say," he remarked as the meeting concluded. "That wouldn't serve either of us," I replied, gathering my notes. "You need someone who will push back when you're wrong." A slight smile crossed his face. "Bold of you to assume I'm ever wrong, Miss Taylor." "Delinda," I corrected. "And you were wrong at least 3 times today," I counted. He actually laughed then, a genuine sound that transformed his serious face. "I look forward to our next battle of wits." Over the next several weeks, Nathan and I developed a rhythm of creative tension and collaborative breakthroughs. Our meetings often ran late into the evening, Chinese takeout containers and coffee cups littering the conference room as we refined the campaign strategy. One rainy Saturday afternoon, I ducked into a small bookstore cafe to escape a sudden downpour. Looking up from selecting a novel, I found Nathan standing in the philosophy section, arms full of books. "Do you follow all your clients to their favorite bookstores, or am I special?" he asked, falling into our usual banter. That accidental meeting shifted something between us. Away from the office, conversation flowed toward personal interests. His passion for classical music, my love of wilderness hiking, our shared addiction to historical biographies. We talked for hours as rain streamed down the windows, empty teacups accumulating on our table. "Why marketing?" he asked suddenly. "With your analytical mind, you could have done anything." "I like understanding what moves people to action," I answered carefully, finding the core truth that resonates beneath all the noise. "And what's your core truth, Delinda Taylor?" I hesitated, surprised by his directness. "That's more of a 5th meeting question." "Then I look forward to our 5th non-work meeting," he replied with a quiet confidence that made my heart beat faster. Despite my growing attraction to Nathan, Jack's betrayal had left deep scars. When Nathan suggested dinner after a particularly successful presentation, I initially declined. "The campaign is going well. We don't need to complicate things," I explained. "Is there someone else?" he asked directly. "There's history," I admitted. "Not good history." Nathan nodded thoughtfully. "History shapes us but doesn't have to control us. When you're ready to make new history, let me know." His patience and respect for my boundaries only increased my admiration. Gradually, we began spending time together outside of work. Small steps at first: a quick lunch, an industry event where we gravitationally drifted together, a gallery opening where he properly asked me to accompany him. After 3 months of this careful dance, we were working late in the office when Nathan abruptly switched topics from campaign metrics. "I know about Jack Harrington," he said quietly. My blood turned cold. "How?" "Boston's financial world is smaller than you think. When we began working together, I had my team research everyone at Westbrook, standard procedure for security reasons. And you've known all this time?" I felt exposed, vulnerable. "What I know is that Jack Harrington is a man who takes what doesn't belong to him," Nathan said, his voice hardening. 5 years ago, he stole proprietary encryption algorithms from my first startup and sold them to competitors. He destroyed everything I had built. I stared at him in shock. "Jack ruined your company?" "And walked away wealthy from the deal," Nathan confirmed. Carter Technologies rose from those ashes. Everything I've built since has been with security measures Jack can't penetrate. He looked at me carefully. So you see, we have more in common than you might have realized. The revelation that Nathan and Jack shared a history completely independent of me was staggering. Somehow, the universe had connected two people damaged by the same man. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Would you have believed me? Or would you have thought I was using you to get to him somehow? Nathan asked reasonably. I needed you to know me first as myself, not as Jack's enemy. In that moment, looking into Nathan's honest eyes, the walls I had carefully constructed around my heart began to crumble. Spring arrived in Seattle with cherry blossoms and more frequent sunshine breaking through the clouds. My relationship with Nathan evolved naturally from professional to personal, our shared history with Jack creating an unusual bond of understanding rather than division. It's almost poetic justice, Nathan said during a weekend hike through Olympic National Park. Jack tried to destroy both of us separately, and instead, we found each other. We had stopped at an overlook, the forest stretching green and vibrant below us. Nathan's hand found mine, our fingers intertwining comfortably as if they had always belonged together. Tell me more about what happened with your company, I said, realizing I still didn't fully understand their history. Nathan gazed across the landscape before answering. 5 years ago, my first startup had developed encryption technology years ahead of anything on the market. We were preparing to launch when Jack approached as a potential investor. His jaw tightened at the memory. He gained access to our servers during due diligence, copied everything, then walked away from the deal claiming our valuation was too high. And then sold your technology, I finished. To 3 different competitors simultaneously, Nathan confirmed. By the time we realized what happened, it was too late. My company collapsed. My team scattered. I spent 2 years rebuilding from nothing. I squeezed his hand, understanding exactly how it felt to have Jack Harrington tear apart something precious. Why didn't you sue him? With what money? Against his team of corporate lawyers? Nathan shook his head. I chose to rebuild instead, creating something even better that he couldn't steal. He turned to face me fully. But I've never forgotten. My legal team has been gathering evidence for years, building a case that will eventually bring him down. The intensity in his amber eyes when he spoke about Jack revealed a determined patience I found both admirable and slightly unsettling. Nathan wasn't driven by blind revenge, but by a deliberate pursuit of justice. Our first kiss happened naturally that evening, as sunset painted the sky in watercolor hues of pink and gold. No grand gesture, just a gentle meeting of lips that felt like coming home after a long journey. With Nathan, I never felt the need to be the perfect, successful Delinda who impressed everyone. He valued my strength, but embraced my vulnerabilities as well. 3 weeks later, Nathan invited me to meet his family in Portland. Unlike my strained family dynamics, the Carters welcomed me with genuine warmth. His mother Susan hugged me like a long-lost daughter, while his father Thomas engaged me in thoughtful conversation about books and politics. Nathan's younger brother Michael teased him mercilessly about finally finding someone who could tolerate his obsessive work habits. You should have seen him as a kid, Michael told me over dinner. He built a fully functioning computer from scrap parts when he was 12 just because someone said he couldn't. Still the same stubborn determination, I observed, smiling at Nathan across the table. Only now I apply it more selectively, Nathan replied, his eyes never leaving mine. That visit revealed so much about why Nathan was different from Jack. Where Jack had been charismatic but ultimately hollow, Nathan's depth came from genuine connection to values and people. His family had taught him that relationships weren't competitions to be won, but partnerships to be nurtured. Back in Seattle, our personal and professional lives began to intertwine seamlessly. Carter Technologies' campaign launched to industry acclaim, bringing Westbrook Creative significant new business. Nathan and I developed a comfortable rhythm, working intensely during the week and exploring the Pacific Northwest on weekends. One evening over dinner at his sleek downtown apartment, Nathan revealed more about his ongoing case against Jack. My legal team found something unexpected, he said, sliding a folder across the table. Jack's entire business empire may be built on fraud. The documents detailed a pattern of Jack moving investor money between accounts to create the illusion of returns while actually funding his lavish lifestyle. New investor funds paid earlier investors in a classic Ponzi scheme structure. He's targeting wealthy families in Boston's social circles, Nathan explained. People too embarrassed to admit they've been duped when the returns seem too good to be true. One name jumped out immediately. Sullivan. My parents. Are my parents investors? I asked, my heart racing. Nathan nodded grimly. According to our sources, they invested most of their retirement fund last year, likely at Audrey's urging. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Not only had Jack stolen my future with his betrayal, but he was now potentially stealing my parents' financial security as well. Despite our strained relationship, I couldn't bear the thought of them losing everything. We need to warn them, I insisted. If we tip off investors directly, Jack might destroy evidence or flee the country before the SEC can build their case, Nathan cautioned. We need to be strategic. That night, I wrestled with the ethical dilemma. My family had chosen Audrey and Jack over me when it mattered most. Did I owe them any loyalty now? Yet the thought of my parents facing financial ruin in their 60s while I stood by knowing what was coming seemed unconscionable. As dawn broke over the Seattle skyline, Nathan found me on his balcony, still struggling with the decision. I've been thinking about what you said, he offered, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders against the morning chill. What if we send an anonymous warning? Something that might make them question their investment without revealing our involvement? His willingness to find middle ground, to help people who had hurt me deeply, confirmed what I already knew in my heart. Nathan Carter was nothing like Jack Harrington, and I was falling deeply in love with him. Later that week, Nathan surprised me with a weekend trip to San Francisco. During a private dinner overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge, he knelt before me with a vintage emerald ring. Delinda Taylor, you've shown me that sometimes losing everything is just the beginning of finding something better, he said, his voice steady despite the vulnerability in his eyes. Will you marry me? Yes, I answered without hesitation, tears blurring my vision as he slipped the ring onto my finger. 1,000 times yes. We decided to keep our engagement private until the situation with Jack was resolved, not wanting our happiness tainted by that connection. But privately, we began planning our future together, including a small ceremony on the Washington coast with only our closest friends present. 1 month later, as I browsed Nathan's tablet for wedding venue ideas while he showered, an email notification appeared from his doctor's office. Opening it without thinking, I gasped at the contents. Pregnancy test results, positive. When Nathan emerged from the bathroom, he found me sitting speechless, tears streaming down my face. We're having a baby, I whispered, showing him the email. I'm pregnant. His face transformed with wonder and joy as he gathered me into his arms. This changes everything, he murmured into my hair. Everything and nothing, I corrected, placing his hand on my still flat stomach. Our plans just expanded to include one more person. That night, scrolling through social media before sleep, I saw a recent post from Audrey. She and Jack posed on their Boston terrace, champagne glasses raised in a toast, celebrating 3 amazing years with the love of my life. The perfect image contrasted sharply with what we knew about Jack's crumbling business empire. Looking at Nathan sleeping peacefully beside me, I wondered how these parallel lives would eventually intersect, unaware that the collision would come sooner than any of us expected. 2 weeks after discovering my pregnancy, Nathan and I were enjoying a quiet evening at home when his phone rang. The tension in his posture as he took the call immediately put me on alert. When? He asked, his free hand clenching into a fist. How many outlets have it? After listening for another moment, he thanked the caller and ended the conversation. What's wrong? I asked, setting aside my book. Alex Monroe from the Financial Times somehow connected the dots between my history with Jack and our current relationship, Nathan explained, running a hand through his hair. He's planning an exposé that frames our engagement as a revenge plot against Jack. My stomach dropped. How could he possibly know we're engaged? We haven't told anyone. Apparently, the jeweler who sized your ring posted a blind item on their social media about a tech genius and marketing maven getting engaged. Monroe put it together with other information he's gathered. Nathan sat beside me, taking my hands in his. He's requesting comment from both of us before publishing. This could compromise the legal case against Jack, I realized immediately. If he knows he's being investigated because of a personal vendetta rather than financial irregularities. Exactly, he could destroy evidence, move assets offshore, or worse. Nathan's concern was palpable, but Monroe's angle is too sensational to ignore. He's publishing with or without our input. That night we strategized until dawn, weighing every possible response. Deny our engagement and risk being caught in a lie. Confirm it but refuse to comment on Jack, which would only fuel speculation. Try to convince Monroe to delay publication, potentially raising ethical issues of press interference. What if we control the narrative? I suggested finally. Give Monroe an exclusive about Carter Technologies' new security platform launching next quarter instead. A bigger, more financially relevant story might sideline the personal angle. Nathan looked at me with admiration. This is why I need you in my life, always finding the elegant solution. The strategy worked temporarily. Monroe agreed to focus on the business announcement, burying the personal connection in the 15th paragraph where few readers would reach. But the clock was ticking on Jack's financial house of cards, and our interference had only bought weeks, not months. We need to accelerate the case, Nathan told his legal team the following day. I sat beside him as they detailed the evidence compiled against Jack's company. The picture was damning. Systematic fraud spanning years, with detailed documentation of money movements between accounts. The SEC needs 3 more weeks to complete their investigation before moving to freeze assets, explained Diane Winters, Nathan's chief counsel. If Harrington gets spooked before then, investors could lose everything. My thoughts immediately went to my parents. Despite everything, I couldn't let them lose their retirement savings. That afternoon, I sent an anonymous email to my father's personal account. Review your investments with Harrington Capital immediately. Request full documentation of fund allocations and returns. Verify independently. Your financial security may be at risk. I hoped it would be enough to make him question his investment without triggering a wider panic. 3 days later, I received a surprising call from my mother, our first direct conversation in months. "Delinda? Is everything all right?" she asked tentatively. "I'm fine, Mom." "Why do you ask?" "We haven't spoken in so long, and with everything happening with your sister." She paused. "I just wanted to check on you." Something in her tone made me sit up straighter. "What's happening with Audrey?" A heavy sigh. "She and Jack have been arguing constantly. Your father ran into them at the club last week, and Jack was berating her publicly about spending too much. It's not like him to lose control that way." This was new behavior from the always polished Jack I had known. Financial pressure was clearly mounting. "Has Dad looked into his investments recently?" I asked carefully. "Funny you should mention that. He tried to schedule a meeting with Jack to discuss some concerns, but Jack's been impossible to reach. Audrey says he's just busy with a new project in Europe." Her voice dropped. "Between us, your father is worried. Very worried." After we hung up, I immediately called Nathan. "Jack's showing signs of stress. My father tried to check on his investments but can't get a meeting." Nathan was silent for a moment. "That tracks with what we're hearing from other sources. Jack's made 3 trips to Switzerland in the past month, likely moving assets. We may not have 3 weeks." Our lives became a tense waiting game. By day, we continued planning our small wedding and preparing the nursery for our expected child. By night, we monitored developments in the case against Jack, ready to move at a moment's notice if the situation accelerated. Then came the bombshell that changed everything. A financial journalist with the Wall Street Journal published the first in a series of articles detailing irregularities at several Boston investment firms, including Harrington Capital. The article didn't name Jack specifically, but described patterns that matched what Nathan's team had documented. Within hours, my phone lit up with a name I never expected to see again. "Audrey." "Is it true?" she demanded without preamble when I answered. "Is Jack stealing from our parents?" I closed my eyes, choosing my words carefully. "I don't have first-hand knowledge of Jack's business practices, Audrey. Don't play games with me, Delinda, she snapped. Dad received an anonymous warning weeks ago that matches exactly what's in today's news. It had to be from you. Why would I have any insight into Jack's finances? Because you're engaged to Nathan Carter, she retorted. Yes, I know all about it. Jack has been obsessed with Carter Technologies for years. When your name appeared connected to their marketing, he had me track everything about you. We know Carter is building a case against Jack. The revelation that Audrey had been monitoring my career was disturbing enough, but the implication that Jack had maintained an interest in my movements sent a chill through me. If you're so concerned, Audrey, perhaps you should be asking Jack these questions instead of me. Her voice broke slightly. He won't talk to me about it. He's barely home anymore. When I mentioned the article, he said I was being paranoid and left for Paris on sudden business. Something's wrong, Delinda. Even I can see that now. Despite years of hurt, the pain in my sister's voice reached something deep inside me. Audrey, if there's any truth to these allegations, you need to protect yourself legally. Make sure your name isn't on any of Jack's financial documents. A long pause. It's too late for that. He had me sign a lot of papers as his wife. I never really read them. Her voice dropped to a whisper. What should I do? For the first time in our adult lives, Audrey was asking for my help without manipulation or competition. The realization was staggering. I need to make some calls, I told her. Stay where you are. Don't confront Jack or tip him off in any way. I'll call you back. Nathan immediately connected Audrey with his legal team when I explained the situation. They arranged a secure call to assess her legal exposure and potential cooperation with authorities. If she signed documents knowing they contained false information, she could face serious charges, Diane explained. But if she was an unwitting participant and cooperates fully, prosecutors will likely focus on Jack as the primary target. The next morning, the front page of every financial publication carried the same headline: SEC launches investigation into Harrington Capital fraud allegations. The house of cards was finally collapsing. The investigation into Jack's financial empire moved with unexpected speed once the story broke publicly. Nathan and I watched from Seattle as news outlets covered every development with breathless updates. Within 48 hours, the SEC had frozen all assets connected to Harrington Capital and its subsidiaries. Investors panicked, demanding answers and the return of their funds. Jack issued a defiant press statement claiming a conspiracy against him by business rivals, specifically naming Nathan. This is a calculated attack orchestrated by Nathan Carter, whose failed company couldn't compete legitimately with mine, the statement read. These baseless allegations will be disproven, and those responsible will face significant legal consequences. Nathan received the accusation with surprising calmness. He's playing the only card he has left, he observed, trying to make this personal rather than financial. Meanwhile, Audrey requested an urgent meeting with us in Seattle. After consulting with Nathan's legal team about potential risks, we agreed to meet her at a private room in a downtown hotel rather than at either of our homes. When Audrey walked in, I barely recognized my sister. Gone was the polished, confident woman who had stolen my fiancé with calculated precision. In her place stood someone hollowed out by betrayal, dark circles under her eyes, and her designer clothes hanging loosely as if she'd rapidly lost weight. "Thank you for seeing me," she said formally, taking the seat opposite us. The tension in the room was palpable as she assessed Nathan, the man she had likely heard about for years through Jack's obsessive rivalry. "Our legal team has reviewed your situation," Nathan began without preamble. "You're in a precarious position, Audrey. Your signatures are on multiple documents that facilitated fraudulent transactions." She nodded stiffly. "I know that now. Jack always said it was just routine paperwork. I never questioned him." "Why start questioning now?" I couldn't help asking. "After everything Jack gave you, why turn on him?" Audrey's eyes met mine for the first time, anger flashing briefly before extinguishing into something like resignation, because I found out I wasn't special either. She pulled out her phone, opening an email. This arrived yesterday from a woman in Paris. Apparently, Jack has an apartment there that he shares with his French girlfriend of 4 years. 4 years, Delinda. That's longer than we've been married. The irony was almost too perfect. Audrey had helped Jack betray me, only to be betrayed herself in exactly the same way. "There's more," she continued, her voice steady despite the visible tremor in her hands. "After the news broke, I searched his office. There was a hidden safe behind his awards wall. Inside was a passport under a different name, account information for banks in countries without extradition treaties, and printed flight confirmations for a one-way trip to Dubai. Just one ticket. He was planning to run," Nathan concluded, "leaving you to face the consequences alone." Audrey laughed bitterly. "Apparently I was just the convenient social connection he needed in Boston, the pretty, status-conscious wife from a good family who could introduce him to potential investors." She looked directly at me. "He never loved either of us, Delinda. We were just different tools for different purposes." In that moment, despite everything she had done to me, I felt a wave of compassion for my sister. We had both been manipulated by a master, albeit in different ways. "What do you want from us, Audrey?" I asked gently. "Protection," she answered without hesitation, "and a chance to make things right. I've brought every document I could find from Jack's home office. I'm prepared to testify about what I know." She turned to Nathan. "Your legal team said that might help reduce any charges against me." Nathan nodded. "Cooperation is your best option at this point, but I should be clear Diane is my attorney, not yours. You should retain independent counsel immediately." "I've already hired Sandra Washington," Audrey replied, naming one of Boston's top white-collar defense attorneys. "She's arranging my formal cooperation with the SEC and Department of Justice." As our meeting concluded, Audrey hesitated at the door. "There's one more thing you should know," she said, turning back to face us. "Jack is obsessed with both of you now. When he found out you were engaged, he became unhinged. Started ranting about how you had planned this all along to destroy him. Her eyes betrayed genuine fear. Be careful. He's not stable anymore." The warning proved prophetic. 2 days later, Jack was arrested attempting to board a private jet to Dubai with nearly $1 million in bearer bonds in his luggage. The arrest was covered live on financial news networks, with cameras capturing his expression of stunned disbelief as federal agents led him away in handcuffs. What none of us expected was his statement to reporters as he was escorted to the waiting police vehicle. Looking directly into the cameras, Jack called out, "Ask Audrey Harrington about her role in all this. She masterminded the investor relationships. She convinced her own parents to invest their life savings. This was her plan from the beginning." The blatant attempt to shift blame shocked even the cynical financial press. Jack's last desperate play was to sacrifice his wife to save himself, revealing the true emptiness at his core. Later that evening, as Nathan and I watched the coverage from our living room, my phone rang with my father's number. "Is it true what Jack is saying about Audrey?" he demanded without greeting. "No, Dad. Jack is trying to shift blame." "Audrey was as much a victim as any investor," I answered truthfully. A heavy silence filled the line before he spoke again, his voice suddenly older and more vulnerable than I'd ever heard it. "We've lost everything, Delinda. The house, our savings, everything." My heart ached, despite our complicated history. "Not everything, Dad. You still have family." "Do I?" he asked quietly. "After how we treated you when?" "That's in the past," I interrupted, surprised to find I genuinely meant it. What matters now is moving forward. After we hung up, Nathan wrapped his arms around me from behind, his hands gently cradling my slightly rounded belly where our child grew. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. I leaned back against his solid presence. "I think I finally am. For the first time in years, the truth is out in the open. No more secrets, no more pretending." The final piece fell into place during Jack's arraignment hearing the following week. As prosecutors detailed the charges against him, including wire fraud, securities fraud, and money laundering, Jack interrupted the proceedings with an outburst directed at Nathan and me in the gallery. "You two planned this from the beginning," he shouted as marshals attempted to restrain him. "You were both just convenient stepping stones to me. That's all either of you ever were." In that moment of unguarded rage, Jack inadvertently revealed his true nature to everyone present. The calculated charm dropped completely, exposing the hollow, manipulative core beneath. I felt Nathan's hand tighten around mine as we watched the man who had hurt us both being led from the courtroom, still shouting accusations that no one believed anymore. Outside on the courthouse steps, reporters swarmed us for comment. Nathan stepped forward, his arm protectively around my shoulders. "Today isn't about personal vindication," he stated calmly. "It's about justice for the dozens of investors who trusted Jack Harrington with their financial futures. The system worked as it should, and that's what matters most." As cameras flashed around us, I spotted Audrey standing alone at the edge of the crowd. Our eyes met briefly, a world of complicated history passing between us. For the first time in years, I saw something like genuine regret in my sister's face. With the slightest nod, I acknowledged her. Not quite forgiveness, but perhaps the beginning of a path toward healing. Later that night, Nathan and I sat on our balcony overlooking the Seattle skyline, processing the day's events. "It's strange," I mused, watching lights flicker across Elliott Bay. 5 years ago, losing Jack felt like the end of my world. Now I can see it was actually the beginning of finding my real life. Nathan pressed a gentle kiss to my temple. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead us exactly where we need to be. With Jack's arrest and the legal proceedings underway, we finally felt free to announce our engagement publicly and set a wedding date for the following month. As I drifted to sleep that night, I realized that the chains of my past had finally broken. Whatever came next would be of my own choosing, unshackled from the shadow of betrayal that had followed me for too long. 1 year later, I adjusted my emerald pendant in the mirror, the matching stone to my engagement ring catching the soft light of our bedroom. My reflection showed a woman transformed not just by the visible curve of my now 8-month pregnant belly, but by the quiet confidence that had replaced years of hidden pain. "Ready for this?" Nathan asked, appearing in the doorway in his tuxedo. After a year of marriage, the sight of him still made my heart beat faster. "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied, smoothing my specially designed gown over my pregnancy. Though I'm not sure a black tie charity gala is the ideal setting for a woman who can barely see her feet. Nathan crossed the room to wrap his arms around me from behind. "You look absolutely stunning. And Dr. Wilson cleared you for the evening, as long as you promise to sit down regularly and leave by 11. The Seattle Children's Hospital Annual Gala had become a fixture in our lives since Nathan joined their board of directors 6 months earlier. Tonight would mark our first public appearance with Audrey, since Jack's conviction and sentencing to 15 years in federal prison 4 months ago. So much had changed in the year since his arrest. Nathan's legal team had helped my parents recover a portion of their investment through the asset forfeiture process, enough to secure a modest retirement, though not the luxury they had planned. They had sold their Boston home and relocated to a smaller house in Seattle's suburbs, slowly rebuilding their relationship with me through weekly dinners and careful conversations that avoided reopening old wounds. Audrey's journey had been more complicated. In exchange for her extensive cooperation with prosecutors, she avoided jail time but received 3 years probation and substantial community service requirements. The social humiliation in Boston's elite circles had been unbearable, driving her to accept my tentative invitation to start fresh in Seattle 3 months ago. "Are you sure about this arrangement?" Nathan had asked when I first suggested helping Audrey relocate after everything she did. "I'm not doing it for her," I had explained. "I'm doing it for myself, for our baby, and for the family we might still become. Holding on to anger takes too much energy that I'd rather invest elsewhere." Audrey now lived in a modest apartment across town and worked at a nonprofit helping financial fraud victims navigate the complex recovery process. Our relationship remained fragile, built on careful conversations over occasional coffee meetings where we gradually addressed the decades of competition and hurt between us. As our driver navigated toward downtown Seattle, Nathan squeezed my hand. "Remember, we can leave any time you feel overwhelmed." "I know," I assured him. "But this feels important somehow, a milestone in putting everything behind us." The ballroom of the historic Olympic Hotel sparkled with crystal chandeliers and Seattle's wealthiest philanthropists in their finest attire. As co-founders of the Carter Foundation, which focused on ethical technology development and education, Nathan and I had become fixtures in the local charitable community. We had barely completed our circuit of initial greetings when I spotted Audrey across the room. Unlike her typically dramatic entrance style from years past, she stood quietly near a column, elegant but subdued in a simple black dress. Without the protective armor of Jack's money and status, she seemed smaller somehow, more human. "There's Audrey," I murmured to Nathan. "She looks nervous." "Understandable," he replied. "This is her first major social event since the trial." Before we could approach her, the crowd shifted, temporarily blocking our path. By the time we had clear sight of her again, Audrey was working her way through the room with something of her old confidence, though her smile seemed more genuine than the practiced social mask she had worn in Boston. Our eyes locked across the sea of black ties and evening dresses. She froze momentarily, then recovered with a small, uncertain smile. The perfect moment arrived when Nathan returned from getting me a glass of sparkling water. That was when Audrey finally saw him clearly as my husband. Her face drained of color in an instant as recognition dawned. All these months in Seattle, we had never directly discussed Nathan's previous connection to Jack. In our careful rebuilding of sisterly communication, that particular detail had remained unaddressed. I watched emotions flicker across her face: shock, understanding, and finally something like respect as she realized the full circle of our intertwined histories. Nathan Carter wasn't just my husband, but also Jack's most significant victim, who had risen above bitterness to build something meaningful. Gathering her composure, Audrey made her way toward us with deliberate steps. "Delinda?" She greeted me with a light kiss on the cheek before turning to Nathan, and Nathan Carter. "I don't believe we've been formally introduced, though I've heard quite a bit about you over the years." "Likewise," Nathan replied evenly, his tone neutral but not unkind. "Congratulations on your foundation's work," Audrey continued. "And on the baby, you both look very happy." "We are," I confirmed, noting the genuine effort she was making. "How are you settling into your new role at the recovery center?" "It's challenging but fulfilling," she answered. "Helping people rebuild after fraud feels like a small way to balance the scales for my part in Jack's deception, even if it was unwitting." She hesitated before adding, "The counseling program is helping me understand a lot about myself. Why I always needed to compete with you. Why I defined my worth through men's attention." The simple acknowledgement of her past behavior, offered without excuses, felt like a gift I never expected to receive. A passing waiter offered champagne, which Nathan and Audrey accepted while I stayed with my water. As other guests approached to greet Nathan, Audrey and I found ourselves with a moment of relative privacy. "I never properly apologized," she said quietly. "Not really. For Jack, for the horrible things I said when I took him from you. For years of trying to diminish your accomplishments because I felt inadequate beside you." "You were never inadequate, Audrey," I replied. "That was the tragedy of it all. You were always enough exactly as you were." She blinked rapidly, containing emotion. "When did you get so wise?" "Somewhere between having my heart broken and finding it again," I answered honestly. "Losing everything showed me what actually matters." The conversation was interrupted as Nathan rejoined us, sliding his arm comfortably around my waist. "The foundation director wants to introduce us to some potential donors," he explained. "Are you up for it?" I nodded, then turned back to Audrey. "Would you like to join us?" She seemed surprised by the inclusion. "Are you sure that's appropriate?" "Given my history." "Your history is just that," Nathan said unexpectedly. "History. What matters is who you're choosing to be now." The three of us moved through the gala together, an unlikely trio connected by a complicated past, but potentially working toward a different future. As the evening progressed, I observed Audrey watching Nathan and me together, seeing the genuine partnership we shared that was so different from her relationship with Jack. During a quiet moment as Nathan spoke with a hospital board member, Audrey leaned toward me. "He really loves you," she observed. "Not like Jack loved either of us." "Jack never loved anyone but himself," I replied. "That's the difference. Nathan sees me completely, flaws and strengths alike, and chooses me every day." "I'm trying to learn how to do that for myself," Audrey admitted. "Choose myself, value myself, without needing external validation." "It's a lifelong practice," I told her, feeling a sudden rush of protectiveness for my younger sister that I hadn't experienced in decades, but worth the effort. As the gala began winding down, Nathan and I prepared to leave in accordance with my doctor's instructions. Gathering our things, we found Audrey waiting near the coat check. "Thank you for including me tonight," she said. "It meant more than you know." "Sunday dinner is at 6. I reminded her of our standing invitation. Mom's making her famous pot roast. Audrey smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her face to something closer to the sister I remembered from our childhood, before competition poisoned our relationship. "I'll bring dessert." As our car pulled away from the hotel, Nathan took my hand. That went better than expected. "It did," I agreed, feeling a sense of completion I hadn't anticipated. "Do you think people really can change fundamentally?" Nathan considered the question seriously. "I think they can choose different paths when they recognize what their old choices have cost them. Audrey lost everything following Jack's path. She's got powerful motivation to find a better way forward." Resting my head on his shoulder, I felt our baby kick vigorously. "Someone's excited about the future," I laughed, placing Nathan's hand where our child made its presence known. "Smart kid," Nathan murmured. "The future is looking pretty remarkable from where I'm sitting." Looking back over the 5-year journey from devastation to this moment of profound contentment, I realized that Audrey stealing Jack had ultimately given me the greatest gift possible: freedom from a man who would have eventually revealed his true nature regardless, and the opportunity to build a life of authentic connection instead. My sister had once proudly called taking Jack her greatest win. Now, watching her face pale with recognition as she finally understood what she had actually won and what I had found instead, I felt the last pieces of resentment dissolve into compassion. We had both been players in Jack's game without realizing the true rules or stakes. The difference was that I had found my way out while she had remained trapped until the game's bitter conclusion. As we pulled into the driveway of our Seattle home, lights glowing welcomingly from within, I thought about the child who would join our family in just a few short weeks. This baby would grow up knowing that true love builds rather than diminishes, that family can heal even after deep wounds, and that sometimes what feels like your greatest loss can become the doorway to your most authentic life. "Home," Nathan said simply as he helped me from the car, the word containing all the meaning we had built together. "Home," I agreed, stepping into the future we had created, not despite our past injuries but partly because of them. Each scar a reminder of our capacity for resilience, growth, and love. Have you ever had a relationship where betrayal eventually led to something better in your life? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with others who might find comfort in knowing that sometimes our deepest wounds can lead us to our greatest healing. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to create your own path forward, whatever challenges you face.